for soft power projection. We had a wonderful session this earlier in the day in India for people and friends and for the journalist fraternity that joined us from the Eastern Hemisphere of India. So now we are here to welcome participants from the Eastern Hemisphere of the world. So we are here to welcome people from the Western Hemisphere, all the way from the United States and the Caribbean, South America, through Europe, and to the Middle East. We have very dear friends with us. I would like to particularly open with a few remarks as an introduction and to set the theme here. I am myself a diaspora person. I live and between now the US and India, and I moved a long time ago to the US, about 34 years ago. I have been in the media business forever. I am a second generation journalist in my family. My father is also here. He's my mentor, Mr. K. Gupta. And I was blessed to also have been mentored in many ways and sort of guided by Baleshwarji. Um, Glad to also see another mentor of mine here, Sri Prem Prakash, chairman of ANI. And of course, very dear guides, friends like Ambassador Virendra Gupta, the president of ARSP, Shyam Parandeji, the Secretary General of ARSP, and Ambassador Anup Mudgal, the chairman of DRRC. Uh, the subject is a very interesting one, and I'm sure that my colleagues and all those who have joined here today would agree with me that together with India, as India comes to celebrate more than 73 years of independence and has reached towards 75 years of India, India's independence, which is becoming a big celebration, and a run up to that is being planned in a very big way by India. But India has come of age, and so has the Indian diaspora. Of course, our migration goes back hundreds of years, and it's a big and very interesting story. But in contemporary times, we have seen that the diaspora migrated to all the many countries around the world, and it's literally present everywhere in the world today, where we went as people with either to work very hard and then with knowledge, and we have excelled in literally every walk of life, including the media. And I remember when I first moved to America, the Indian media was not treated with a lot of either respect or given the time of the day. But we made our place, we made our presence felt, we got our stories. And today, Indian media, both in India and Indian media around the world, and all of you, my friends present, who represent different media in different parts of the world, is a force to reckon with. And by Indians in media, I include not only people who belong to the traditional medium of news, but also media encompasses today entertainment, which is television, which is sports, which is movies. And today you find Indian diaspora and Indians who have migrated even recently over the last 30, 40 years, making a very big mark in literally every aspect of media. They are running the technology companies that are the wheels of that are turning the wheels of social media, digital media today. So Indian diaspora is everywhere. Indian diaspora is also one that is known to not just create influence, affluence, and be the bearers of knowledge, but also people who are known and respected and revered in countries to have assimilated in their countries and made a mark through assimilation. So that's another very important aspect. Of course, the one thing that I heard in the morning session was that, we Indians are a little bit conservative and we haven't got into the interracial marriages yet, but I think that's also happening. And we see a lot of that happening. So there is a lot of interracial mix. The most important thing is that Indians have come of age in the politics of country, in the social life of countries, in the economics of countries, and in the science and technology areas of country and in the media of countries. I think it's very important that India, when it looks today to create a mark and become a global leader, that India pay attention to and also work very closely with Indians in media around the world. And as India creates, we've nurtured as Indians. I've heard so many people say you can never take an Indian out of India out of an Indian, and we always practice our culture, our religion, our ethos, our traditions. But more importantly, we also, in a very soft but very meaningful and impactful way, pass that on to every society that we have become a part of. We've been able to very successfully communicate with our societies, become the anchors for India and our communities. And I think as New India rises, shines, and grows, the power of the Indian diaspora in the media, and like I said, Indian media in a wider sense, digital media, social media, sports, entertainment, everything, and news, television, is going to be something that is not only to be reckoned with, but where people, the society, government of India must work together with media to use that and use it in a nice way. We also heard in the morning one of our very good friends from New Zealand talk about, we don't want to be putting out propaganda, we don't want untruth, we want the truth. But I think the most important thing is that the India of today is still not known to a lot of people. The changes in India today are not seen right by the people. The narrative has to be set forth, and the narrative has to be corrected time and again. Whatever is happening in India for the last 5, 6, 7 years, as India undertakes rapid and very important landmark reforms, is not understood, and sometimes deliberately, misconstrued. So there is a role for all of us to play, and I think we are all very proud Indians, and the Indians in media have worked very hard. Indians are taken and recognized with a lot of respect. So this is a very interesting session. We had fun in the morning, listening to a lot of very good speakers. I'm sure that we will have an equally enthralling, entertaining, informative session now this evening. I'm wondering whether Shamji, if Professor Ved Prakash Nanda has joined or not. I don't see our keynote speaker. But in the meantime, I am going to now, after speaking and laying a little bit of a background for why we are gathered here today and what we want to discuss and debate. But before I close and ask Shamji to open with a welcome address, I would like to say there was a very important suggestion made in the morning session by our members who joined, Diaspora Media members who joined, by saying that we must have some sort of a fraternity that we must build of Indians in media. And I thought about it, and I've seen that. I've done it in America with the South Asian Journalist Association. I'm a secretary of the Foreign Correspondents Club of South Asia in New Delhi now, where we've grown it to 300 foreign correspondents and 900 Indian correspondents. So I would table literally a proposition today, because this is a great beginning. 2021 hopefully is going to be a watershed year in many ways for the 21st century, I hope, especially post the COVID pandemic. So let's table a suggestion that we may consider creating an association of Indians in media. The objective has been always to gather ourselves, and it's Indians in media, so it's generic. It's Indians from India, it's Indians in media wherever in the world, including the diaspora media, and by extension, Indians in all form of media. So our aim could be to create AIM, AIM. I love that name when I heard about it. Indians in American media, I am. So I think AIM would be a good start. With those words, I would like to now welcome uh, Mr. Shyam Parande. He is well known to a lot of us, most of us. He's traveled the world. He's interacted with the diaspora everywhere. He's interacted with diaspora media in many countries around the world. I have known him for a very long time, and he is the Secretary General of the Antarashtriya Sahayog Parishad and a guiding force for us. Shyamji, with your welcome address, please. I think there might be a connectivity issue there with Shyamji. He will join back again shortly. But that's, I don't know why, maybe the link chained Anupji, so maybe that's what is still keeping Professor Nanda from joining us. But if somebody could call Shyamji and ask him to speak, I will speak to Professor and help him connect.
I will have a word with him. I'll talk to him.
Okay. Shyamji, please go ahead.
Now, There was a connection problem, it looks like. Well, I take this opportunity to welcome all the distinguished guests and distinguished panelists in this session. Sahyog Parishad has been involved into across the world, and is the first organization started this activity 50 years back. The Sahyog Parishad Baleshwarji Agarwal's centenary celebrations are being celebrated this year, and today's sessions are a celebration. Balesh qualified as a from Banaras Hindu University, which is now IIT BHU. He representing Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangha was asked understand skills and capabilities. He was asked to develop a new that he worked for 30 years. He has mentored tens of journalists who are at the top of the journalism in India as well as abroad. This agency was the largest news agency in Bharat, in India, and it was a vernacular news agency catering to the all vernacular press in India. And of course, has the largest clientele times. That's how he was a journalist, but by profession, and has mentored, as I said, a lot of them, getting grassroots news from all across the country, all states, and then dispersing itself all over. In those times was a Herculean job that he developed teleprinters which can then teleprint into various Indian languages. Hindi, of course, at the top of the language in teleprint. And beyond that, he also many weeklies and monthlies. One of them used to deal with news in Nepal. It was published from Patna, and for 30 years it was published under title Nepal Sandesh. That was his contribution to the field of journalism in India. After that, the Hindustan Samachar, he's also started connecting with diaspora in Mauritius and Girmitia countries. And in course of time, Antarashtriya Sahyog Parishad was established and then developed into a premier organization working with diaspora. And Baleshwarji organized the first conference for the parliamentarians from across the world, and it attracted parliamentarians. After that, he planned, organized a conference for trying to connect the back to their mother country, so that to the soft power of India, and that he tried as he can, but it could, as a matter of fact, today's dream come true for Parishad, with distinguished journalists of Indian origin participating into this event. I welcome you all to this event. And there are, of course, challenges. Journalists, because they are the citizens of those countries where they live, and they have to balance between that country and their country of their origin. Of course, Indian tradition and culture gives them a huge support, in the sense, because of India's diversity. Indians are armed to deal with diversity abroad also. It's not a challenge many a times for Indians to understand the local cultures and traditions, adapt them, as well as convey our culture to them. So that's how they need to balance both the identities, and I am sure that they are doing it successfully. They can contribute to India's rise. India is now a brand across the world. Since last 6-7 years, India is being seen as a rising power, and during the pandemic times, the latest COVID times, Indian diaspora organizations and India itself as a country has helped many countries, providing them with medicines and whatever they needed, like PPE kits and everything. And because of that, our image has still brightened. I hope this conference will come up with good number of suggestions to connect with India, one, to connect amongst the diaspora journalists, the second, and contribute together in building India's soft power. With these words, I welcome you all and hand over the mic to Munishji. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you very much, Shyamji. Very well said, very well enunciated in terms of the role of the Indian diaspora and the role of the Indian diaspora media in the past and coming and into the future. Without further ado, I take great pleasure, tremendous pride, and with I don't know what to say, to welcome somebody I've looked up to, somebody who has mentored me, somebody who's been close to the family, somebody who is such a great writer, orator, an illustrious leader of the Indian community, Professor Ved Prakash Nandaji from the United States, from Denver. Thank you for waking up so early to be a part of this very wonderful webinar and celebration. And of course, we all know your association going back in time with revered Baleshwar Agarwalji. Professor Ved Prakash Nanda is not just a doyen in the law circles, in academic circles in the United States and in India, but it's somebody who has carved the shape, at least for people like me, of the Indian diaspora and given us a path to follow in the country of our adoption, which is America. He is a Padma awardee and he runs the Ved Nanda Center for International and Comparative Law, University of Denver, Stern College of Law in the USA. I can go on and talk more and more about what Professor Ved Prakash Nandaji does, but he's known to a lot of us, and a special delight to have you here, particularly with your two old friends, Nanda Saab, one, my father, Mr. K. N. Gupta, and the other, Sri Prem Prakash ji of ANI. So welcome, sir, and we look forward to your keynote address now. Please go ahead. Unmute yourself. Kindly. Let me. Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Munishi. I very fondly think of working with Kedarji, working with so many here. And so, Honorable Ambassador, Anilji, Shamji, and I could name everyone here. I'm looking around the faces and have the greatest admiration. And so my Sadar Namaskar and Pranam to everybody. And I'm delighted and honored to be with you today and talking about the soft power and soft power of India. As I think about it, the significance of any country's soft power cannot be overstated. It is a nation's ability, and you know all of that, to attract or persuade other nations rather than coerce them using economic or military means. That is how Joseph Nye coined the term in the late 1980s. When I was at Yale, we invited him, and he talked about at that time, he had not yet coined the term, but he had been talking about that soft power. And as I think about it, and as we think about the soft power, all of you probably know that there is a Soft Power 30 project in which each year for the last many years, they have looked at countries and said what country has excelled in using its soft power, not to coerce, but in order to convince or persuade other countries so that its own image and what it wants to achieve can be accomplished without a great deal of difficulty. And for the first time in 2020, India did get into that soft power 30. And it was 27th. Former Secretary General at that time, launching it has said that soft power transcends both borders and it also builds bridges. And 3 days ago, in his inaugural address, President Joseph Biden announced that henceforth the United States will be leading, not by the example of our power, military power, but by the power of our example. You know, India doesn't need to get any lectures about soft power from anybody because there's nothing new. As you look at history, it has recorded that it was not India's military prowess, but its cultural richness that attracted countries throughout Southeast Asia, from Myanmar, Thailand to Malaysia and Indonesia, India's neighbors north and south, and they embraced Indian values, Indian thought. I know that many of you have traveled throughout that region. I have in almost every country, and I know that many of you have done that too. And the indelible imprint of India throughout that region, India's culture, it's evident today. Go to Indonesia, Muslim names, but Hindu festivals. Buddhist faith, but Hindu traditions. And the evidence of Hindu culture is all over. Enough about history. In the recent past, during the Cold War, India's firm stand against South Asia's apartheid, boycotting that country, won its respect from post-colonial African states. I was in the US, and at that time, we were trying to have the same kind of boycotting South Africa, working against apartheid. In my own university, I was the president of the students there, and we took our students and went to Washington at the embassy and demonstrated. But then at that time also, India and India's stand was admired by all. I also can think of not simply that, but colonial African states. They look to India. And despite overwhelming opposition from the United Nations, from the United States, India's intervention in East Pakistan resulted in the independent state of Bangladesh. You probably remember that it was acceptable world over because India called attention to the morality of its actions. And its soft power, if you want to remember that, the former Beatles member George Harrison, joined by Bob Dylan, Eric Clapton, organized a sold-out concert in Madison Square Garden in New York, helping to bring that acceptability. There is no dearth of examples when one can fight, but suffice it to add one more. It was India that in 1959 gave refuge to the Dalai Lama. Now, the Tibetan spiritual leader and his followers in McLeodganj are a tribute to India's age-old tradition of embracing the persecuted as indeed a shining example of India's soft power, which is a necessary ingredient of its engagement with the world. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's pivot to India's eastern neighbors. Worldwide enthusiastic annual observance of the International Day of Yoga. Popularity of India's cuisine, India's classical dance, its art, which led the leading American magazine to vocally declare on its cover, and it said, "We are all Hindus." It shows the impact of India's soft power. Prime Minister Modi's numerous leadership awards, Seoul Peace Prize, Gates Goalkeeper Award, Kotler Presidential Award, all illustrate how influential India is becoming. Gandhiji's worldwide image as an apostle of non-violence and peace may also be cited. As a major actor in the region, Afghanistan has witnessed India's soft power. Thousands of fellowships, training a generation of civil servants, 400 projects in 34 provinces, building of schools, supplying wheat and medical resources, and more recently, COVID aid. And you had asked me to talk about Indian diaspora, and especially in this country, in the United States. And I simply want you to know that that diaspora has demonstrated a great deal of pride and continues to do so in their homeland. Indian journalists, through their op-eds, through their speeches, they have furthered India's soft power. I do a regular column for my own newspaper, Denver Post. As you probably know that in the United States, unlike India, where newspapers are abundant and they are so popular, in the United States, newspapers have not been in ascendance. They have been in decline. But there are only 3 or 4 national newspapers. It'll be New York Times, Washington Post, maybe Wall Street Journal, and from England, Financial Times. But then there are regional papers, maybe 8 or 10, that have got India, and with its circulation of millions, it doesn't really mean much, but 100,000 circulation is plenty. And for the Denver Post, I write a column, and I simply want you to know that, like me, those people who are writing, and occasionally about India, They are, by their own writing, their conferences, their speeches, because there are plenty of international or Indian organizations here. They are regional, they are linguistic, they are based upon service, and Seva International. There are so many organizations here that have been working very hard in order to see that India's soft power is not simply disseminated here about that information about it, but that people have an image of India that they consider to be important. It was an Indian journalist, Shirish Datte, who at a press briefing last August, he was the only one who asked Trump. He said, after 3.5 years, do you regret all the lying you have done to the American people? Trump was flabbergasted. And he asked, what do you say? And he repeated it. And obviously he couldn't answer. And then he went on to another question. You probably have heard Indian journalist Dr. Geeta Anand. He became last fall Dean of the University of California, Berkeley, Graduate School of Journalism. And US Department of State, Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs. Yesterday, it applauded India's role in global health as the country by sharing millions of doses of COVID vaccine in South Asia. Washington Post reported its admiration from India to send free shipments of vaccine to Maldives, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and that India is going to extend such shipments to other countries. The State Department said India is a true friend using its pharma to help the global community. I need to mention to you, and you probably know that there are some critics who would say that India at the present time is punching below its weight. It has got a potential that still has to be realized. And obviously, much more can be done given its democratic traditions, its culture, to reach its own potential. However, as you also know, there has been distortion of recent India's actions, especially in Kashmir, with an enactment of CAA. It is essential that in India, effective measures are taken to counter that negative image. Because that negative image, at least in the West, because they look at all that's happening around the world through their own prism. And when they think about their own prism, then inclusive and exclusive comes to their attention because they look at Hungary, they look at Austria, they look at Poland, they look at the United States with the white supremacist efforts. And then they think about India and look at India and say minorities, because minorities issues come up in all these countries. And so my request to all of you is, because I know I read what you write in newspapers and magazines from India, and I'm very, very impressed because we need to learn from you. But at the same time, I don't know how to or what to tell you about it, but it's absolutely essential that effective measures in India are taken to counter that negative image being portrayed in the West about Kashmir, Citizenship Act, treatment of minorities. Now, I know that my time is up, but I need to say that to you. Kindly do know that. I know that you know it, but kindly do remember that the diaspora in this country, journalists in this country, Indian organizations in this country, that they are very proud of what India has done. And from here, anything that we can do. When the nuclear issue came, and as you probably know, that India's diaspora all over the world, and especially in the United States, took a great deal of action. I, at that time, I have my student who was the Secretary of State, and I hadn't asked her much, But on that particular occasion, I did talk with her, and she said, "Well, listen to my speech when I'll talk to to Congress." And I think as you go back and as you look at all that has been said during that time, that was a marvelous speech, hard hitting, convincing, compelling. And I think the point I simply want to make for you is that here, journalists in this country, Indian organizations, individuals, we are all proud of India. India not only is the country of our roots, but a country of our inspiration. And here we have not forgotten the rich heritage that we came from, the values that I learned with you, and people like Kedarji and all those who are right there and sitting in front of me, because I can see you. I have the highest admiration. We've learned from you. We'll keep learning from India and kindly keep continuing your blessings upon us so that people here in this country and in all other countries as diaspora can speak highly, not simply about India, work for India, and see that India's soft power around the world continues to spread. My deepest gratitude to permit me to come and join you and to give my highest regard and deep gratitude to each one of you. Munishji, I have enjoyed working with you all these years. Continue to do that. And as I hear your own accomplishments and what you have done, I feel very, very proud. So my deep admiration to each one, my pranam to everyone.
Thank you very much, Professor Ved Prakash Nandaji. Your words are always, you know, a guide to us. You've mentored a lot of us. You mean so much to us. You've done so much and accomplished so much in that country over a long period of time. So we look up to you and thank you very much for giving us that path and showing us, where we can go with the impact that diaspora has created and can continue to create in the future, and the role that the Indian journalists and media can play, not just in the United States, but across the world. I still remember when the diaspora movement from the West, ARSP and Baleshwarji started here from the East, but from the West, when it was launched in the mid to late 80s in New York at the convention of Gopio, how it became a very big movement and brought together 3,500 people at that time in September 1989. So thank you very much.
Munishji, you permit me my apologies to at this time again intervene, but I do need to say a word about Baleshwarji because I'm so glad that you are doing this program because I remember every time I would go back and every time I went to Delhi and many, many times each year, I would always go and see Baleshwarji. And Baleshwarji's passion about having India's soft power around the world, his outreach in every country, starting with his own work as a journalist and doing all that he did, and then how he inspired people all over. And I remember every time I went back, he would say to me, "Well, you live in developed countries. What have you done about those in Fiji, those in Trinidad and Tobago, those in Guyana, those in Suriname?" And so, with his own outreach all over, and trying to see that all over the world, diaspora speaks about India, works for India's soft power. So I want to pay special tribute to him today. Thank you very much for permitting me.
Thank you, Vijay, and that's what has brought us all together here. It's a great movement. It's a great start to this new year post-COVID, hopefully, and it will lead to bigger things that we can do as both the diaspora and Indians in the diaspora media. And just before you came and joined us, we had talked about resolving as part of this first conference and session to create an association of Indians in media everywhere in the world. And we do hope that you will give us the benefit and grace of joining us. You are in your own right a very big writer and speaker, so please bless us with that. In the meantime, now to move things forward, we have been a little behind in time. May I now take us on to the technical session, which is going to be chaired by Professor Gopal Arora. He is the secretary of the Antarashtriya Sahayog Parishad, a long-standing member and leader of the Antarashtriya Sahayog Parishad. He deals a lot with the diaspora, particularly the youth diaspora. I still remember starting the Know India program through the ministry and with Gopalji a long time ago with the RSP, and it has become a very beautiful, very big program. So kudos to Antarashtriya Sahayog Parishad and Gopalji. Please take over.
Thank you very much, dear Manishi, and thanks for your kind words about me. At the outset, I compliment you and Ambassador Anup Mudgal and the TRRC team for conceptualizing this wonderful and very important program. And in fact, it's a befitting tribute to the legendary Baleshwar Agrawalji, on whose birth centenary we are organizing this program. We all know that he started his career as an engineer, but that may have been his profession, but his passion lied in journalism. And the journalist in him, you see, after serving with Hindustan Samachar for over 3 decades, and when he took over the reins of Antarashtriya Sahayog Parishad, the journalist in him, you see, was still alive and kicking, and he kept on writing. And he wrote very well about Nepal, about other diaspora issues, and about the world affairs. And I'm very happy to have, you see, a very, very distinguished panel here with us. I am seeing that we have Mr. Lalit Shah. Sudhir Parikh ji will be joining us, I hope, in a while. Manishi, can you just follow up with him? Mr. Kuldeep is here. Mr. Robin Baldev Singh ji is here, and Anjana is here. And we also have some other very veteran, you see, learned people in Mr. K.N. Gupta, Shri Prem Prakash ji, Vichitra Sharma ji, Nawab Khan ji, and all others. Please excuse me that I'll not be able to, you see, take all the names during the course of our proceeding. Yes, we'll be mentioning them. And as you said that there is a constraint of time, let me just start with our first panelist, Mr. Lalit Jha. His brief introduction: he's a chief US correspondent of Press Trust of India, based in Washington, D.C. since 2009. And in that capacity, he has extensively covered Obama administration, Trump administration, and now will be covering the Biden administration also. It's a long journalistic career. He has been writing for, and he has been covering for IANS, The Hindu, The Hindustan Times, The Indian Express, NDTV.com, and also has been, you see, working for agencies and in Afghanistan, Burma, Bangladesh. Well, we have such a distinguished panel, and I know they will have lot of, things, suggestions, recommendations to us. But considering the constraint of time, I will have faith in their capacity to articulate their viewpoint in about 6 to 7 minutes of allotted time. I know it may not be sufficient, but I will request them to kindly confine themselves to that time. And should they have more to say, they are most welcome to email their detailed presentations to us. And I will also like to mention here that all your suggestions and recommendations, you see, we will be forwarding to the appropriate, at the appropriate levels in the government, which will be very valuable as a policy input. So to start with Mr. Lalit Jha, the floor is all yours, please.
Just before Lalit starts, Gopalji, I've just spoken to Dr. Sudhir Parikh. He will join us and he can speak next, after your next intervention.
Wonderful. Over you to Mr. Jha, please.
धन्यवाद प्रोफेसर गोपाल अरोरा जी, परम आदरणीय श्री वेदनंदा जी, एम्बेसडर वीरेंद्र गुप्ता जी, प्रेसिडेंट अंतर्राष्ट्रीय सहयोग परिषद, मनीष गुप्ता जी, चेयरमैन PIO TV, Shah Parande ji, Secretary General ARSP. Namaskar to my distinguished fellow panelists, Sudhir Parikh ji, abhi aaye nahi hai, he will be joining us soon, Kuldeep ji, Robin ji, and Anjana Shankar ji. And greetings from Washington, D.C. To all those who have joined this virtual conference titled Diaspora Journalists as a Force for Soft Power projection. As you know, it is being organized by ARSP as part of birth century commemoration of Sri Baleshwar Agarwal ji, founder of ARSP. Himself, as Shyamji has already said, himself an eminent journalist and founder of Hindustan Samachar, Baleshwar Agarwal ji was a pioneer in news agency journalism. And today we also have in our middle Prem Prakash, Chairman ANI, another pioneer in news agency journalism in modern India, in particular creating network of video and digital journalists across the country. Being a reporter for Press Trust of India myself, which is India's premier news agency, and having reported from the US for more than 16 years now, I can definitely say that Sri Baleshwar Agarwal's vision and actions were much ahead of the time he lived in. He was quick in adopting new and latest technologies. His thinking was out of the box. There is hardly any news agency in the world right now which can producing news in 18 languages. Today, Hindustan Samachar has brings out original content in 18 languages, right? And his innovations, his technological things, as Shyamji has mentioned. For instance, it was his efforts in that teleprinters in Devanagari Lipi were introduced in Bharat much ahead of time. And this was one step that helped in survival and thriving of non-English Indian languages media outlets. Today, Google and Yahoo can translate in multiple languages. Microsoft does that, Amazon does that. But at that point of time, that helped in revival of language newspapers in various multiple Indian languages. No one would have thought about that. And the foundation for today's thriving and popular vernacular Mandya language, I believe, goes to his efforts primarily. Maybe we can talk about that vernacular language some other time, because our discussion today is diaspora journalism. In modern India, Baleshwar Agarwal ji is one of the few Indians who had made pioneering efforts in connecting diaspora globally. Much before the Indian government started Pravasi Bharatiya Divas, which is now the signature event for overseas Indians and people of Indian origin, it was Baleshwar Agarwal ji who acted as a bridge between the diaspora and Bharat. Coming to the diaspora journalists, I think, as you have mentioned, can play a very important role in driving people-to-people relationship between India and the country they live in. They can help create the ecosystem of friendly and strategic relationship between the two countries. In fact, they have an important role in presenting facts and analysis both ways, as Vednanda had mentioned in his keynote address. The India to the diaspora and the large world and vice versa. A diaspora journalist is the bridge that fills the information gap, presents ground-level realities, and showcases the issues from the perspective of diaspora. At the same time, journalist is in a unique position to take a comprehensive view of any issues having the background of both India and overseas. The diaspora journalists would be in a better position to explain to the world and the country they live in issues like CAA or the Kashmir issue, what's happening in India, its soft power, its cultural values, right? All those things. So in that way, diaspora journalist plays a very important role. And in today's age of revolution and social media, a diaspora journalist can play an important role in not only verifying facts and information on a real-time basis, but also giving a perspective to all the developments both ways. Similarly, he can explain to our audience in India what are the nuances, what are the cultural values on the countries they live in. As such, the need of a diaspora journalist has never been as great as it is today. I would underscore here that there is need to expand the group of diaspora journalists. As our PIO TV chairman Munish Gupta ji has said, I welcome his initiative in creating that network. As we commemorate his birth century, it would be apt that a news agency from India take his philosophy and vision for original writing and reporting in the language globally, people who understand, language and medium people who globally understand. I will call it 2.0. Hindustan Samachar today is in more than 18 languages. It might not be the largest news agency Now, at one point of time, it was India's largest news agency, but now it's time that we can create his vision and take it to the next level. What could that be? One, to have a news agency, India headquartered news agency, which could be world's largest news agency, and bringing that reporting to in the language and medium that people can understand. And this could be in French, Spanish, German, Chinese, Japanese, Arabic, Persian, Russian. Why not? We have such a huge network of Indian Americans or Indian diaspora all across the world. They speak the language of the country they live in, and they will be best suited to bring those values, those original reporting to on both sides, both the India and the country they live in, the language people they understand, and that in that way any news agency, India-centric news agency can play a very important role. And in this, and I think I will stop here, and I will be available for any questions that comes up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jha. You have, in fact, in very few words, actually summarized the whole thing so well. Especially, you see, you're mentioning that diaspora journalists, they occupy a special position and that can act as a instrument of bridging the information gap. That is in fact very, very important. And I may also add that in fact they can actually perform it on both ends of this chain, not only in the countries in which they are working. You see, they can put across the perspective of Indians here or the ground reality which is prevailing in India. But it works the other way around also. I believe that in India, what others think about you, that also you can actually perform very well. I appreciate and thank you for your address. The question answer session, we have kept a little time subsequently after all the panelists have spoken. And before I invite the next panelist, as I mentioned that we have amongst us Mr. Prem Prakashji, a veteran journalist himself, a chairman of ANI. He was with us in the Eastern segment program in the morning also, and he had to leave. So I have received a request. So Shri Prem Prakashji, if you would like to, you see, take an address for short address, kindly share your views. And then after that, I will be inviting Mr. Parekh. Dr. Parekh.
Thank you very much, Bharatji and Munish. I would first like to pay my tribute to Baleshwarji for the fact that we are here to honor him. He was way ahead of his time. Whatever you see today in terms of PIO cards, OCI cards, etc., it was all his dream come true. It was his efforts that resulted in the huge meetings of diaspora. India's diaspora made a positive impact for the country. And therefore, I do that with it's my honor to pay tribute to him. It was a pleasure that I got to know him so well, and his dream, and the fact that it is coming true. Yes, it is true that India has been respected always, from times immemorial, as our keynote address speaker, Mr. Nanda, pointed out. There are other things like technical things. I'm proud to say, I'm not going to take too much of your time. Somebody mentioned about the emergence of Bangladesh and how the world supported it. The fact is, I had a lot of contribution to make to that. I would go into East Pakistan at grave risk to my life to cover what was going on inside there. And it was those reports. The first one was from Jessore. It was those reports from Jessore, Khulna, Chuadanga, all over the places, which made the impact in the world to stand up and see the kind of genocide that was going on in East Pakistan. I could have been killed there any time, any moment, and so on. So The problem today, technically, is that many journalists don't go to the location and they make their opinions and reports, which is again very unfortunate now. So we have come a long way that there. We need to correct that somewhere, because my worthy speaker before me from PTI was making that effort and saying that we should have a worldwide thing. Yes, what you see around in the world on television from India, I would say 90% of it goes from ANI Reuters. We have a very happy relationship with Reuters, and the global distribution goes there. So the agencies and the Indian diaspora, Indian journalists, I appreciate and welcome the suggestion of Munish to create a global directory or association or whatever. It's going to help a lot. It's going to help a lot. And with these remarks, I would take leave of you, but primarily, I would say that if India's image is now gaining strength, it is because India is not just a soft power. India is showing herself in other fields as well. We are economically moving ahead. It was a pity that we adopted Fabian socialism in our early years, which ruined our economy. But today we are beginning to gain strength again as an economic power. We are gaining strength as a military power. And if we are able to achieve self-reliance also, for example, now India's Tejas fighter plane is one of the finest in the world. All these things India needs to project its image. And I'm sure the diaspora journalists abroad will see what's happening in the mother country and then help it. Thank you very much, sir. That I close.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prem Prakash. You have given your words of wisdom that an objective journalist has to distinguish between his views and news. So you may have any ideological affiliation, but when you are covering news, when you are writing news, and you have to be objective. Thank you very much. Now I take this opportunity to invite Dr. Sudhir Parekh ji. Is a medical doctor by profession, a highly decorated person, a Padma awardee, Pravasi Bharatiya Samman awardee. He was also, he awarded the National Excellence Award. And he is the CEO of News India Times and ITV. We are fortunate to have you with us, Dr. Parekh, and we look forward to your views. The floor is yours, Dr. Parekh.
Good evening, good morning, everyone. Dear Vedji, my good friend Munish ji, my very good friend Lalit Jha, and all other friends and distinguished speakers and panelists in this group. As our MC introduced that I'm really professionally, I'm a full-time medical doctor who owns almost 25 largest asthma, allergy and immunology group in the USA with the over 400 doctors and nurses are working for me. But that's beside the point. The point is my passion for India advocacy goes back almost over 40 years. I'm the one who was very active. That time I was not owning any media group. Early 2000, I mean, in 1993, I was a driving force for formation of the India caucus in the US Congress. Also, I was driving force with the friend of mine, Keshwan Narayan, in formation of the Friends of India in US Senate in late 90s. We are very active in protesting against our sanction against our nuclear blast during the Atalji's administration. Also, I'm the one who was kind of quoted in the Dawn, in the Pakistan main newspaper, that I was trying to protest F-16 sale to the Pakistan by USA, and successfully we blocked that time when Henry Hyde was the chairman of the South Asian Foreign Relation Committee. And now I own the largest publication house in North America with the 4 weekly newspapers: News India Times, Desi Talk Chicago, and Gujarat Times. And also we have both print media, print copies, as well as digital version of all the 4 newspapers. Plus, we have now, I own the 24/7 oldest Indian TV channel called ITV Gold. So between the ITV Gold and 4 newspaper, we are the really a largest publishing house since last 12 years. Not only that, but I started 4 years ago, and it was inaugurated by Sushma ji, our Foreign Minister Sushma ji. The only Indian-owned think tank is called Parekh Foundation for India's Development, and we usually comes out every quarterly a very nice magazine which goes to all the government offices as well as a lot of embassies and diplomats. So after this background, I believe that the journalism in diaspora is very, very, very critical. And because I work with a lot of other think tanks like Heritage Foundation and Carnegie Foundation, and we realize through their feedback that at this moment, India really needs journalists or publications which bond India to US, diaspora to the India, particularly the second generation, because we all are first generation who all are here on this webinar. They all are first generation. We love India, we love motherland, we have natural bonding to the motherland. But our second generation does not have that bonding to the motherland. So my main goal and passion and real interest is to bond our second generation to the motherland, because we may not be here after a few years, but we have to continue this legacy. And therefore, we had a webinar with the Heritage Foundation and other think tank, and they all agree that India needs 3 things. One, we must promote through our media journalism foreign investment, direct investment in India. We also should always to help in US-India relation, so that we can prevent Chinese aggression to the India. And third thing, we should dispel a lot of misconception or misunderstanding of our government, our current government in the Western media, particularly in the Western liberal media like New York Times and Washington Post, and as well as Bloomberg. So I think it is our duty to give them the facts. Just for a classic example, recently, the senator of New Jersey, Menendez, and other 7 congressmen, they wrote against complaining to our government about this Kisan protest, but they were not factual. So I myself took a initiative with our Consul General, and we corrected that what are the facts of the Kisan protest. So I think that is our real issue right now, to give the facts to the outside world, outside India, and promote the US-India relations, and bond the second generation, which is very important. Otherwise, what will happen once we are born first generation? Then there will not be, and I don't see anything, because when I took over Gopal Raju's publications 13 years ago, there were 4 or 5 newspapers were publishing in USA. Now we are the only one who publishing in USA hard copy. Nobody is there. India abroad is gone. India West is gone. Everybody is gone. So I think it is very critical to continue the bonding second generation to India. If you do not develop that second generation leadership or journalism and publication, then I think it will be disservice to our motherland. So that's my goal, and I'm sure I always welcome all your guidance and well wishes to continue my passion, uh, uh, to continue my passion about think tank as well as TV channel and publications. Thank you, and thanks for inviting me. And it was a great pleasure to be part of this distinguished friends and panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Parekh. In fact, we take pride in knowing that you own that resources of News India Times and ITV, and your commitment, especially to know that your commitment is to, keep the younger generation, bond alive, and to acquaint them with our own Indian culture. You have also mentioned about the narrative part, because while Mr. Jha said that there is a information gap, but I think there's a more a fact gap. Actually, there's an information overload. What is happening is that in social media, you have so much of information, and much of it, fake or spam. So there is a need for a credible agency or credible media houses to actually provide the correct narrative. So we will keep connected with you, Dr. Parekh. It was a great pleasure to hear you, sir. And now I will be inviting Mr. Kuldeep Singh Shekhawat. Mr. Shekhawat is the Secretary of Indian Journalists Association in United Kingdom. Started his career as associated editor in a Hindi daily from Rajasthan. Then he moved in 1983 to Bombay, and I'm seeing that there he was connected with the entertainment media. He worked associated with various films and television projects. Subsequently, in 2000, he moved to United Kingdom, and he was the director of programming with Reminiscent television network till 2003, managing 14 network stations worldwide. Over to you, Mr. Kuldeep Singh Shekhawat.
Respected friends, respected Vedji, Munish Gupta ji, Shyam Parande ji, Bharat ji, and all distinguished friends. You have given a lengthy description of what I do and what I am. Well, I'm not here for what I do. Basically, the whole issue that surrounds the Indian community abroad is our voice should be heard not only in India, but also abroad in our own countries. UK, we have a very serious issue of miscommunication with the government, and unfortunately, UK happens to be one of those centers where we have a lot of anti-India activities going on. Kashmiris, I must say the Pakistani occupied Kashmiris, then the Khalistanis, all these movements are built, bred, and centered, and then what you can say is pulled out of the cupboard and moved in front of the High Commission in India, in UK. So the Indian media in UK has not been up to what it should have done earlier. In 2004, I took up the challenge of going to diaspora and telling them that, okay, we should have our own voice. So we have started a TV station called MATV, that is for Indian community. It's a complete community channel. And similarly, we've started a newspaper called Jagatwani, one of the oldest newspapers from Punjab. We have brought it to UK and we run it. Now, the whole issue that surrounds the community in UK is misinformation, first thing, miscommunication, second thing, and lack of interest amongst the community. In UK, it's a very old diaspora that we have, one of the oldest diaspora that moved out of the world from India to the world was in I think Africa, and from Africa they turned up in UK. Have still roots with India, but they are very negligent about what is happening in India, how the government of India works, and the problem with this diaspora in UK is that they have not been well informed. Unfortunately, we have a British Broadcasting Corporation called BBC, which is a, a, a total anti-India organization. They don't give a true picture of what India is all about. So what we are trying to do is combine the efforts of all the media houses from India and also locally, and inform the Indian community what is happening and what should be done to counter all these anti-India activities happening in this part of the world. And my whole, what do you call, uh, sense of saying is that there are a lot of countries where anti-India sentiments are being grown. Like you can take a very good example of Canada. You can take example of Germany. You can take example of some Scandinavian countries. Lot of anti-India activities are being created. Indian community is being misled. Local governments are being misled. They are given a very bad picture of India. We can say India is a globally rising country, but these countries are not ready to believe. People, even last week, we had a discussion in the parliament regarding the what do you call, uh, regarding the discussions about the Muslim community, that we in India are not giving equal rights to the Muslim community and Christian community. Can you believe in 21st century India doing something like that? But this kind of misinformation has been given, has been created. Members of parliament has been wrongly informed. So all the media houses, I'll request all of you, including myself, that we should get together and do something about this misinformation propaganda against India. We should do something to inform the world that hang on, India is a power which is coming up, and it's coming up democratically. There has been lots of noise in this country about the farmers' agitation, and it's all in the wrong direction. We have been running show after show saying that no, government of India is not wrong in what they have done. The agitation which is taking place in India, India is permitting that agitation, and it's a wrong information that is being floated to members of parliament in this country. So I request all of you are very senior journalists here, and all of you have your own say in the world. Please try and make a platform which I think was suggested in the beginning, and we should make a stronger voice worldwide. We should make a stronger group to have India's voice heard all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shekhawat. In fact, you have highlighted a very important issue of, you see, misinformation and, the anti-India activities. Well, as a matter of fact, I'm reminded of a very famous quote from Mark Twain when he said that if you don't read newspapers, you are uninformed. And if you read newspapers, you are misinformed. I think at that time also he, highlighted this issue. But in my opinion, you see, the answer to misinformation is to give the correct information. And with all this kind of social media, we should use this effectively. In fact, this program also, it is being now aired directly, through PIO TV and UNI TV, and it is on other social media platforms also. So I sincerely believe that you see that they will take note of, the audience will take note of these points, and we compliment you for the good work that you are doing. In fact, the whole objective of this program is, when we say that the diaspora journalists, as a force for the India soft power projection, in fact, that in a way is to correct that anomaly, or the distortion that we are seeing in some of the places. So I appreciate your efforts in that. I now have the honor of inviting Mr. Rabin S. Baldev Singh ji. Mr. Baldev Singh has been to Pravasi Bhavan when he was in India. I remember having interacted with him. The former deputy mayor of the city of Hague in Netherlands. The grandson of Indian indentured laborers. He was born in 1962 in Suriname. He's a renowned author, poet, columnist, editor, has been doing a lot of activities. A lover of India, a Pravasi Bharatiya Samman awardee. Floor is yours, Mr. Baldev Singh.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much for having me in this program, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. My participation will be a little bit frank and a little bit critical as far as, journalism in diaspora is concerned. Because what is the case right now here in the Netherlands? You have to understand that the Indian community here in the Netherlands is a very small community, only 200,000 people. And this community, the far majority of this community has a double migration. So indeed, our grandparents went to Suriname to work on the sugarcane plantations, and their descendants, of course, came in the 70s to the Netherlands. So this community is small, and that means that actually people are very much focusing on other fields, to become an engineer and a doctor and, be successful in business, etc. So journalism as such does not have the attention actually it deserves. That means that if you look at the community and if you look at professional journalists here in the Netherlands of Indian descent, you could count it on your one hand. So there are very few, and these are people, they're very good journalists, they are very serious in their business, but they are very much focused on domestic issues. So the bonding actually with India is very far away. Of course, there is a connection with India as far as culture is concerned, but as far as political, economic, or even social developments is concerned, that's a little bit far away because they are focusing very much on the domestic issues. So these journalists cannot be seen, I repeat, they cannot be seen as the soft power of India. What we have, we have indeed some small quarterlies and magazines and a couple of websites. And these websites, which are not very professional, but they are indeed focusing on Indian matters. They are not very much organized, and their impact is not that great. You could count them indeed as a part of soft power as far as journalism is concerned. But mind you, it is a very small group and it works within the Indian diaspora community itself. There are some radio stations, I think some 3 or 4. They are listened very well because we are very much accustomed to listen radios. So you would have some national radio stations of Indians, and there are some television programs, on specific channels and on the website. But mind you, the impact is not that big. So what you see is that although we are connected because of music, because of culture, because of Bollywood, because of yoga, and because of, the heritage itself, religion, for example, it is quite difficult to spread the Indian cause actually here in the Netherlands, and as far as I'm concerned, also on the European mainland. What you see on the European mainland happening because of this development is that, when India is in the news, it is Dutch media doesn't really mention, the economic growth, for example. They will mention, the religious tensions. They will mention poverty. Actually, all the opening lines of a program will be, India as, a poor country. So the media is actually, from my perspective onwards, it's a little bit not informed. People are not aware of the giant steps India has taken, the last 20 years, economically, but also socially, creating a middle class which has become very powerful and thus has been able to, to lift up, the lower levels of society, the poor, for example. People here in the Netherlands are not very aware of this, and I'm a little bit troubled about this. So much so that even intellectuals and the journalists we have here will not bother in spreading.
Sir, you have gone mute. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Something happened. I'll put the
last 30 seconds if you can remove. Last 30 seconds. If you can repeat,
so what I mentioned is that the problem is that even individuals and journalists, they are very much focused here, and the awareness is not there to spread the news actually that India has made giant steps in the last 20 years, for example, economically, not only economically but also culturally. I mean, if you look at the musical developments, even the way films, the Indian cinema has developed. I mean, people are really not aware of that, and I think I'm bothered. And to conclude a little bit, friends, as far as indeed India is successful in getting its messages across here in the Netherlands and in mainland Europe, I think, via, for example, the websites and satellite, etc. The problem is that the success is only within the Indian diaspora community. So India has not succeeded up till right now, in my humble opinion, to get its message across to the mainstream audience, to the Dutch audience, for example. And I think there lays a huge task or a huge challenge for all of us to do something. And if we could do it, indeed, by creating an association of Indian media, that would be, of course, great, and I would salute that. I would support that also. But I think it would be interesting for major Indian channels or Indian newspapers, for example, to have a kind of a press bureau or something here in Europe or even in the Benelux or in the Netherlands, to be vocational as far as to correct the unawareness actually what is going on there. So soft power, as far as journalism is concerned, my dear friends, I think there is a lot of work to be done. I'm sorry that I have to be as frank as I am right now, but I cannot make the story better than it is. We are doing our best to be a little bit vocational, but it is tough, and there is indeed work to be done, and to use professionals, but also the non-professionals, which are a little bit active, a little bit with media work, to get them to get messages across, which are very important, not only to you all, not only to India, but also to the diaspora community. And that is to build bridges, not only among us, but perhaps especially to build bridges towards, the environment around us. So the receiving community, so the Dutch community, as I may say it so. Thank you very much to letting me, to hear me out.
Greatly appreciate, Mr. Baldev Singh. You have been very candid, and in fact, the whole objective of such conferences, in fact, is this only: to know about what are our strong points, and also where we are lacking. Actually, it is not merely an exercise of self-praising. In fact, it is self-appraisal. So in that context, you have highlighted some very important points. The challenge is to reach out to the mainstream media. You have made a very valuable suggestion of having some press bureau there. In fact, in the morning session, Shri Ashok Tandon, who was the former, he was the press advisor to the Prime Minister Vajpayee, he also mentioned that somehow our foreign correspondents, that number has actually gone down. I wonder if language itself can be one of the constraints or the barriers because of which we are not able to put across, because Netherlands is not an English-speaking country. We can discuss more about it. This is only a beginning and not the end. Well, thank you very much for.
No, sorry, the Netherlands is indeed not an English-speaking country, but
Yeah.
people speak English very much so here. So English is accepted as actually a kind of second language. But mind you, my outcry is not only from the perspective of the Netherlands. I have been a little bit active and connected with, for example, the European Parliament, in all kinds of ways. And if I look from a European perspective also, indeed, my friends, there has work to be done.
We take your point, sir. We take your point. Thank you very much. And now I have the pleasure of inviting Anjana Shankar. She has participated in some of our earlier webinars, also when we had it on, the Gulf during the pandemic times. Anjana is a senior journalist based in UAE. And she has covered the Yemen war, the Rohingya refugee crisis, the Syrian refugee crisis, and other international stories from the front line. She's currently the assistant editor at Khaleej Times, a young, promising journalist. I invite you now, Anjana ji.
How are you all able to enjoy the ride? Thank you, Niranjan sir. Leaders don't change.
Anjana, are you there, please?
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. It's been quite interesting to listen to an eminent panel of experts, and also to have an opportunity to air my views as a diaspora journalist myself, and from a unique part of the world, which is quite different from the experiences that you have shared, whether it's from Europe or US or Africa. Because the diaspora community in the Gulf region is one of the biggest, or the biggest Indian diaspora community. And I think it goes without having to mention that because of the sheer size of the number of the diaspora community here, the diaspora journalism in this region is also quite active. The number of diaspora journalists here would outnumber, I think, all of the journalists put together in the other diaspora communities. Considering the time constraints that we have, I will straight jump into the three main areas of interest or the responsibilities that I consider Indian diaspora journalists have in this region. So one is definitely highlighting the politics and the ramifications of various policy matters that the government of India would adopt time to time, and what are the implications it has on the diaspora community in the region. I would like to disagree a little bit with some of the panelists here on the topic of the soft power of Indian diaspora journalists. I think diaspora journalists, we have to walk a thin line and strike a thin balance between, being the voice, connecting governments, connecting or promoting people-to-people relations, being in a third world, like in a third space. What I meant is in a third space. But at the same time, I think as diaspora journalists, you will have to strike a balance when reporting on Indian policy issues. I don't think diaspora journalists should be just to promote Indian policies. Being a journalist myself, and an Indian expat myself, I think it is critical for diaspora journalists to highlight policy issues, keeping aside your patriotism. And I think for me, patriotism and journalism are two different issues. So I think striking the balance is very, very crucial. While on one side, we want to promote India's rising ambitions as a global power, highlighting to the rest of the world what India is aiming to be, the Indian policies, whether it is in Kashmir or, when it comes to Citizenship Act, all of that. I totally take the views of some of the, very distinguished panelists here who spoke about misinformation and need to counter misinformation as global journalists here. But I think highlighting these policies and how it would impact, whether good or bad, I think that is an objective view that diaspora journalists have to take, and I definitely agree that it is a challenge, especially when we are working in certain regions where we are not. We have certain caveats when you put out information. We are not from a fair and free. Journalism is not the fourth estate, so we consider all that caveats. But I think that objectivity is very crucial for diaspora journalists. And the second aspect of diaspora journalism is definitely promoting the issues of welfare of the Indian expat community. Over the last 15 years of my journalist experience, and also reading what other diaspora journalists write, a chunk of the journalism that we do is focused on the labor issues, human rights issues, immigration issues that the expats, more than 2 million Indian expats face here in this region. And as we speak, today we have the Minister of State for External Affairs, Mr. M. Muralidharan, is on a visit to the UAE, and it is the Indian journalists who met him, spoke about the issue of how many Indians who went back to India during the repatriation process because of the COVID-19 crisis, they're still stuck there because of certain government approvals which are not coming through. So like these kind of issues is what is very crucial for diaspora journalists highlighting. I think third, a very important aspect of diaspora journalism is definitely influencing or talking about the geopolitics of the region where you are in. So I think over the last decade, the change that I have witnessed is from a legion of journalists who are only focused on expatriate issues, welfare, or what is happening in India and the implications on the Indian expat community here. We journalists have moved to influencing foreign policies as editors who handle world pages, as editors who handle the India pages. We place and we write edits. We focus on opinion pieces or on how the world would read India. So I think in the role of diaspora journalists on influencing policy decisions, not just in India but also in the host countries that they are in. That is a major role that Indian diaspora journalists are playing. Telling the story of India from the place where I'm coming from Gulf region, I think one advantage what Indian diaspora journalists have is when I tell a story in the national newspaper in the UAE, I'm reaching out to the UAE government, I'm reaching out to the local population, and I'm definitely reaching out to the expat Indian population here who are the chunk of our readers. But at the same time, in the Gulf countries, you're talking about it's a region where more than 200 nationalities also live and work as expatriate population. So as diaspora journalists from the Gulf, we have an easy pathway to reach to the rest of the world. So when I write a story, it just doesn't go to only Indians or to Emiratis or to Bahrainis or Qatar, depending on where your national newspaper is based in. But you're reaching out the 200 plus different nationalities who actively watch your coverage, read what you write, whether it is a news story or an opinion piece. So in short, I believe Indian diaspora journalists coming from the Gulf region is a force to reckon with, and it's a voice that is difficult to ignore either for India or for the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anjana ji. A young journalist, and you are a force to reckon with, you said. Wonderful. Thank you very much. You actually mentioned about striking a balance, which is very important. The true journalist has to be objective, and he has also to be mindful of his power that he influences, he makes opinion, and that makes his work all the more his responsibility, all the more, very, very important. Now we are done with the distinguished panel. We have, very learned participants, who have been listening to our panelists. And we have just about 10 minutes for that brief interaction. I will request our participants that if they have any question, they can put it in the chat box. And please confine yourself to 2 minutes only, not more than 2 minutes. We have very limited time, because after that, Ambassador Anup Mudgal, who is the chairman of the Diaspora Research and Resource Center, who is organizing this program, he will be summing up and giving the vote of thanks also. I invite Mr. K.N. Gupta ji, veteran journalist, the long-time associate of Baleshwar ji. Sir, kindly briefly address this webinar.
Thank you, sir. So far, I have already spoken a bit early in the first session. So now you have asked me, with due respect, first of all, to Professor V.P. Nandaji, who has been with us and who has been our guide. And he has the best connections with Baleshwarji. So as I said earlier, I was in touch with Baleshwarji when he moved from Patna to Delhi. Since then, his last days, I was in touch with him. And whenever there was a problem with us, we used to go to him and sort it out. Global Organization of People of India, GOPIO, had some problems and he intervened and helped us a lot. Maybe we were not very successful, but he took the leading part. As you have mentioned, the parliamentary conference was first convened by him, and we were closely associated with it. Later on, he motivated me to organize first media, diaspora media in Brussels. Mr. Nawab Khan is there with the help of GOPIO and International Federation of Journalists. We had organized it. So Baleshwarji was a motivator. He used to tell us how to do things. And he was a versatile personality. He took interest in each and everything. And we have seen how he helped us. And many people may not know, but he had trained most of the journalists as his workshop. Because Hindustan Samachar was a platform from which a lot of people came and joined other newspapers. There is a long list about it. So our huge respects to him, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gupta ji. I now invite Vichitra Sharma ji. She has been writing for the biggest Indian American newspaper, India Abroad. Ma'am, kindly share your views.
Namaskar. Briefly, I will introduce myself. I've been a journalist for last 30 years. Held high positions in a lot of newspapers in India, Economic Times, Times of India, Hindustan Times. I've even reported from the UN headquarters for HT and worked in many countries around the world. I'm an alumni of the School of International Public Relations, Columbia University, and done my journalism from Berlin when it was West Berlin. I see this platform for expanding the role of diaspora journalists, reconnecting with some of my old friends, harnessing their synergies as well as synergies back home, taking forward cooperation and bonding and listening to them, what is the issues they're concerned about, reconnecting those issues with back home. I see this today. I don't want to go too long because I'm making a lot of notes of what everybody's been saying. let's see how we digest all that information. And so today, I really want to take this opportunity as a listening brief from the diaspora. Sorry, in the morning, I had a lot of internet issues, so I got disconnected, but I did hear till New Zealand, and maybe I'll catch up a little later. So it is basically, I want to tell all my journalist friends from around the world, my seniors who are here today, as well as people from the Ministry of External Affairs, from ambassadors, that I'm taking this as a listening brief today, so I don't want to go any further, but it's been a great opportunity. Thank you, Bharatji.
Thank you very much, Vichitra ji. I also take this opportunity to acknowledge the presence of Ishwar Ram Lakshman ji from South Africa. He's from, represents the Gopio International there. And then back home in India, we have Narayan ji, director of ARSP. I am seeing Abhay Agarwal ji is there. Dr. Amba Pandey is there. Anil Vartak ji is there. Partha Sarthi. Well, thank you so much for joining us in this very important program. I now invite, is there any other question, please? Would anybody like to make some brief observation? 1 minute. We still have little time left. Or then I will. Yes, kindly. Who is it? Please introduce yourself. Did I miss it? Anybody there, please? So can I now invite Ambassador Anup Mudgal-ji to kindly sum up the proceedings of this session and also present the vote of thanks. Over to you, Ambassador Anup Mudgal.
Yes. Thank you so much, Gopalji, for conducting this session. A long day. I did this job in the forenoon session. I thought I'll reverse the roles with Gopalji for the afternoon session. I will be talking with the advantage of having sat through both the sessions and listening to so many wise views on the theme that we had selected today. It was a fascinating day, let me tell you, because when we were planning this conference, I was a bit doubtful because, as many of the participants mentioned, and Anjana was very clear, the journalists would ask, why do you want me to behave in a certain manner that you think is right? That's not the way the journalists normally behave. They have their own views, and they do not want to be driven by ideas of others. But today's experience was very pleasant because neither we expected that nor the participants reacted that way. It was, believe me, a very honest effort in trying to understand how diaspora at large and within Indian diaspora, the journalists could help create an enabling environment for achieving India's core national goals. I am sure when it comes to the India's core national goals, there would be literally no disagreement amongst the people who belong to this land. Anjana, you mentioned patriotism and journalism. As long as you tell the truth, both are the same. A patriot should tell the truth and should stick to the truth. And the journalists are also supposed to stick to the truth. If we both remain on the truthful path, then there is great convergence between journalism and patriotism. There is no conflict. In fact, I was deeply impressed with how Professor Nanda, in fact, carried us over that long journey of India's soft behavior. Now, in the morning session, I did the same thing, sir. I took the gathering some 2,000 years back and tried to trace the achievements of India's soft power, starting from the days of Buddha and then coming to the present. Even, for example, people mentioned about our independence movement. That is one example in the world where the soft power of India was victorious against the hardest of the hard powers of the colonial rulers. I think we in diplomacy, in fact, you very often use the term India is a living civilization. There were many other civilizations, but nobody claims to be a living civilization. Now we need to really sit down and examine why other civilizations cannot claim to be living civilizations, or why India is able to claim that right of a living civilization. Because of those Indian values, those Indian qualities, those qualities of, as I mentioned in the morning, those qualities of peace, non-violence, tolerance, pluralism, acceptance of a counter viewpoint, where I said, in fact, if somebody disagreed with us, we did not take out the sword. We sat down and we talked. We talked and we talked till we reached a point of convergence. That is why India is a living civilization. If the Indian story is based on truth, believe me, that story will last forever. But if we are driven by passions, anger, untruthfulness, propaganda, cosmetics, those stories have a very short shelf life. My submission behind the theme today, because we struggled what kind of theme we should really select, my submission to my compatriots, either they are diaspora members or within diaspora, the diaspora journalists, my submission is that as a nation, we kind of negotiating certain enabling environment which makes sure that we are able to achieve those goals with minimum disruptions and hurdles. Now, those disruptions and hurdles could be those of ideas, those could be of ideology, those could be of violence, those could be of terrorism, those could be of environmental degradation, those could be of lack of energy security, food security, and all those things. Everybody who feels attached to that goal of progress tries to contribute towards creating an environment which is benign, which is supportive of a policy which aims to carry you forward. But in case the policy does not carry that process forward in a truthful manner, I think if we do not stand up and question that policy, then we shall not be patriots. And that is where I expect the diaspora journalists. There is an information overload, and majority of that information overload is either misinformation or fake information or alternate truth or post-truth. Now, if you feel that any of that misinformation is hurting our interest as a nation, and that interest belongs to everyone. Nobody, no single person should claim that that interest or vision belongs to that only person. It belongs to all of us. If you feel that act or misinformation is hurting our core national interest, for God's sake, correct that information. That is not propaganda. That is our duty. Because if we don't tell the lies, we also should not accept the lies. That is what the whole philosophy behind the theme today was. And believe me, I am extremely excited after listening to all of you that we have a truthful, honest convergence. I would leave the passion out. I will leave the emotion out. I will bring the pragmatism in and hardcore rationality in. And believe me, when I count those factors, I see a lot of convergence. And that gives us the hope. That gives us the hope that we are walking side by side, not necessarily in counter currents. Because if we are swimming in the counter current, then we need to sit down and talk why we are swimming in counter currents. Today's conversation gives me a lot of hope, a lot of confidence, a lot of trust that this great nation, which carried on the soft power for thousands of years, finally will move towards its destiny, the same truthful, soft power. Believe me, the shelf life of soft power is much longer than the hard power. I'm very happy that we are wedded to soft power. Hard power is sometimes an obligation to use, sometimes a compulsion to use, but Indians are instinctively in favor of soft power. With these words, I thank you all from the bottom of my heart. In a way, you made my day as the coordinator of this conference and as head of the Diaspora Resource and Research Center. There were some very, very good recommendations, and we will convert those recommendations into our report and try to see that there is greater convergence between all truthful people and all patriots. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will end the live cast now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So let's stay in touch. Please, if you have any more stories to share, share with us without fear and favor. As long as it's the truth, we'll welcome it. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you all participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you.